But so you can have the skill, but like just like in anything, you can take a skill and use it for good or use it for bad. That alone, just because a person's good, you have to look at their history, their reviews, and see what are they using that skill for. Go back to my Secret Service days, so meeting people who would tell me, generals and stuff, that there's something out there. They didn't know either, but they knew it wasn't us, and it wasn't the Chinese, and it wasn't the Russians. So what it is, they don't know.
Ed Hruneni is a rare bridge between worlds. After more than 2 decades serving as a Secret Service agent, grounded in discipline, discernment, and protection, he maintained a deep fascination for the metaphysical and the unseen dimensions. Ed went on to found the Maryland, Virginia Psychic Fair and the Metaphysical Market. He shares with us today what to look for and how to find the practitioner, healer, facilitator who truly resonates with your highest and best. KarmaHub, sharing the spirit of the healing arts. Ed, thank you so much for joining us. So your background is fascinating. You have a background in military intelligence as a federal agent. You were in the Secret Service. You're working at the White House and overseas for the president and vice president for, multiple decades. Later becoming an independent private investigator in addition to, a handful of other jobs. And then you founded the Maryland Psychic Fair and Virginia Psychic Fair, Metaphysical Markets. You were a co-host of the Virginia Mutual UFO Network. And, it's an interesting dichotomy you've got going on here. So there's got to be a good story between, you work in your high-profile security protection investigation, and now you host, promote metaphysical happenings, events, and festivals. So tell me how you got into all of this.
Yeah, you're not going to find too many having these type of backgrounds doing this. So I guess you could say all the way back to my childhood, always interested in the unexplained and supernatural. And my first love actually was UFOs, which I now call UAPs. And I've been a member of MUFON since 2012 and interested and read all the different books on that. But in the meantime, I seem to have some acquaintances and friends that were psychics, healers, into the metaphysical world. So they kind of got me even more interested, more involved with them. And being at the White House, although myself, I never saw any supernatural acts or so, but very, very reliable people I worked with often told me about how, and they kind of told me on the side. It wasn't like they're announcing to everyone because it wasn't a thing you did, about shadows that you shouldn't see, statues that move when no one's looking, just slight movements, but things that you couldn't explain. So on top of that, I guess when I met Joan Quigley, she was the astrologer for Nancy Reagan. And,
oh, wow. Okay.
And I got to meet her numerous times, and she was quite an interesting person. And according to her, and you could say the scuttlebutt around the White House, the day that Reagan was shot, Nancy did tell him, please don't go. The signs, I'm being advised by Joan, and the signs all indicate it's going to be a bad day for you.
Oh, wow.
So all types of stuff like that. So, and then even after I left the Secret Service, being involved in private investigations and law enforcement connections, you'd be surprised how often, you don't hear it on TV or anything, how psychics help law enforcement find bodies and missing people, stuff like that. And being more aware of that. So that kept my interest all the way. And you were asking how I got involved doing these events and stuff. When you think of rock groups that are very good musically, but they can't manage themselves, can't organize themselves, can't promote themselves. Right. It's the same with many of the vendors, the psychics, the healers, the card readers, whatever. And they're very good at what they do, but organization, promotion is not their best
Right.
best thing they do.
Oh,
So with I have these acquaintances and say, would you mind if I helped you, if I set some things up? And it started very small. I'd have one person at a winery, one person at a brewery, and then it just got bigger and bigger. Now I have some of those events that are 43 to 46 vendors at the event.
wow. Yeah, oftentimes the artists are not the best businessmen. A lot of these
Right.
facilitators, they're not the best promoters. So it's nice that they have you to assist them in that way. So you ran into Joan a couple times. What are some of the things that she may have expressed to you, turned you on to? Um, I'm presuming you were still kind of new to all of this when you were in the White House. Is that what kind of opened the doors further?
Not really. I was familiar with what she was doing. Was not familiar with her until I met her. And sometimes you're waiting, for Nancy to be available or whatever. And although they often were on the phone, it wasn't like she was at the White House every day or anything like that.
I
So
see.
if and I wasn't working every day that she was there. But when she was finding out what she was and just hanging around with her, I kind of brought up the subject that I've always found that interesting, and so her and I often got into conversations. So, and she did write a book. I forget. I think it was called let's see, what does Joan know? That talks about that
Okay.
whole time period. She
So
doesn't mention me in the book though.
so Nancy was pretty open with about
Oh
her
yeah.
interest in the
Oh,
metaphysics.
she didn't hide that at all.
Was Joan able to help them kind of plan meetings and events meeting or and events or meetings that took place? I mean, I get that she tried to discourage the Ronald from going to that particular event where he got shot, but did did they have ears on her? Did they listen to her? Did she help kind of massage the direction of things?
Um, I can't tell you for sure how much President Reagan listened to her, but I think somewhat. But
Maybe more after he got shot,
maybe.
right?
But yeah, it was everything from let's take this serious, depending where you work, who you work around the White House, whether it's security or the cook or whatever, to the minimum of laughing it off, like that's crazy stuff. So you had the whole spectrum on that, and
Gotcha.
yeah.
And now is that metaphysics? Is that something you find very much, very many people interested in that topic in like the Secret Service or the White House or you know Capitol Hill?
Well, it was just like the UFO subject that people are more willing to talk about it now. Back then, not so much. I was in the Secret Service from 1970 to 1996, and that wasn't exactly what you went around talking about.
I see.
So, and like I said, when some of the fellow agents, officers, whatever, would mention they saw a shadow and racing after to see, hey, no one's supposed to be there, and there wasn't anyone there. They weren't telling a lot of people. It's like I don't need to get to go to see the psychiatrist or anything.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I
So they
understand.
only
Yeah.
trusted,
Well, I think the whole
shared the
topic.
story with people they trusted.
I think the whole that whole topic was a lot more taboo then than it is now.
Oh yeah.
I feel like people are starting to come back around or come around a lot more open. Um, and you hear it in almost everyday life, at least I do in my circles, um, more openly than you otherwise would have in the past.
And I have to inject it. And because of that, you have a lot of people who have no interest in the metaphysical world, or so they look at it as a way to make some money. And so you have
Mm,
to kind of be careful about that. It's jumping on the bandwagon, even though, and their only purpose is to try to make money off of it. Anytime something gets a little more popular, that's what happens.
okay, so I was going to ask you, you know, you kind of answered my question. You feel like because it's becoming more popular, because it's becoming more present, the people that aren't being entirely truthful, or in some cases, outright fraudulent, they're jumping on that bandwagon.
It has been happening. Yeah, not only locally, but all over.
I mean, do you feel like this type of work has always not so honest people have always gravitated toward this type of work, or do you feel like it's more recent, or what are your thoughts around that?
It's probably always been. It's just more people might be giving it a shot that would not have tried it before. There's always, and unfortunately,
Gotcha.
just like in law enforcement, one bad one makes it rough for everybody. In the Since 2017, I've been doing these type of events, approximately 6 to 8 different events a year,
Mhm.
anywhere from 17 to 43 vendors at a time. And last year was the first time I had one person kind of get by me that I shouldn't. As soon as I realized that, I stopped her, and she's no longer at any of my events.
I gotcha. Well, I've had very good success. I've experienced many different healers and coaching and intuitives, and I'm very, knock on wood, I'm very happy to say that I feel like everyone I've worked with has been very truthful, very honest. They're certainly not always accurate. Even the best of psychics, my understanding is maybe 85% is as good as it gets when it comes to even the best of psychics as far as accuracy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a big difference between being accurate and trying to take advantage of someone. Um, but I'm glad to hear. So you do vetting for your festivals, like strict
Actually,
strict vetting. I mean, that's like in your background, so you know how to do it best, right?
yeah. Well, I guess that's it makes me a little paranoid about everyone, and I feel like they all represent me. So if there's any fraudulent or
Mm,
anything going on that's illegal or something I don't approve of, that's a reflection on me too. So I actually think I do more check than many, at least in this area, do. I mean, other people do other type of checks, but I have asked around and around. I'm the only one that does background checks on people on the vendors, whether they're selling crystals or gems or doing a psychic or whatever. Any vendor that's at any of my events, that's just one of the check boxes that they have to be approved. And unfortunately, I do have to eliminate a lot of people who seem pretty good, but based on what I find out about them, and you know,
gotcha.
and I have found some of these same people I've rejected at some other events, and I've gone up to the organizer and mentioned to them, this person has committed fraud, or they've changed their name, they've done this or that, they've been arrested for this, and I have been told sometimes that well, they paid money for the table, I don't care. So
Mm,
that bothers me big time.
gotcha.
So
Understandable.
yeah, I have a whole list of things you have to qualify for to do my events. To this day, I still turn down more people than I accept.
So, what are some of the things that you do to actually? What would be a part of your typical background check? Just out of curiosity.
Well, and it's not only criminal; it's civil because you find out people have been sued numerous times for various things. What you know, but some things you might not think about. For instance, if someone owes lots and lots of money, they have been uh, taken, wherever they live, they've been kicked out of because they weren't paying rent. They owe the federal government. They owe this person. They haven't paid this. They haven't paid that. Now, I can't trust that person giving financial advice or what they're going to be charging to anyone that might be visiting them at the table. It's kind of like behind closed doors. You don't know what's going on, so I have to feel behind closed doors that nobody's trying to rip anyone off. But so that's just one thing. Um, Over the all this time period, I only had one person I rejected for traffic violations. But when I mention it to other vendors, they tend to agree with me. In a 3 year period, they had like 17 red light violations,
Okay.
and a bunch of other things, and that's what they were caught at. So how many more did they do? Now, why that's important to me is because I have known people who have been injured from others who ran red lights, even killed because of that. And to me, that tells me you're thinking more about yourself than others.
Fair
And
enough.
and good psychics and stuff are
Mm,
not worried that that's not what their thing is. So So, but yeah, so that's on the background type checks. There's that, and criminal stuff. If they've been arrested for numerous things over a long time period.
Gotcha.
I mentioned, sorry, but I
Yeah,
just don't.
I haven't thought about that. As far as the finance and even traffic tickets, that is an angle I hadn't really taken in consideration.
There was
Um,
only that one, and like I said, that was just I thought over the top. I mean, one or two running a red light, it happens with cameras nowadays and stuff. But 17 in 3 years, and I'm figuring they don't care about anyone but themselves.
that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I really like that a lot of this is becoming so much more visible because I feel like this type of work all has to do, well, I mean, it doesn't all have to do, but it really supports the concept that we are all connected. When you think of psychic, people are like, no, you can't really connect to the ethers or intuitives. You can't connect to the ethers, but I found out a couple years ago, or I was convinced a couple years ago that you can. And it's nice to see so many of these different events can demonstrate that people can truly connect to the collective consciousness. And
yeah. I've seen so many skeptics get turned around on this, and it's
oh
like,
yeah,
how do you?
I mean, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. This is certainly wasn't my jam. Um, you know, and I was actually at a Tony Robbins event about
Oh,
15 years ago, and it was kind of behind the scenes. I'd gone to many before. I was a big Tony Robbins fan, um,
mhm.
and I was a crew member, kind of behind the scenes, helping
Oh,
him out, um, non-paid hired help, and back behind the scenes, there are a lot of people that like to that um, help people, facilitators,
right,
practitioners.
right, yeah,
And it just so happened it was my 40th birthday. There was a facilitator that was working with stones and muscle testing. And
yeah.
I got a big dose of that, and it was mind boggling. I spent the whole weekend trying to debunk it, never could. But it was just one thing after another. I experienced Reiki that weekend. I
Oh, yeah.
um, experienced, Tony Robbins brought in some speakers just for the crew members. They were a little, I
Oh,
guess, too far out for his regular participants. But for the crew members, he brought people speaking on the subtle energy and muscle testing and things like that. And I witnessed things that aren't, I mean, as far as I knew, weren't possible. Um, and then the final day there, this one lady, I asked for some help. I told her I was going through a divorce, and she's like, I'll give you 30 seconds of my time. And I was like, oh, that's so generous of you, is what I was thinking. That's, totally sarcastic, right?
right.
And, she was in this doorway, and she looked, she turned around in the doorway. She looked at me straight in the eyes, our eyes locked. I started getting lightheaded. Her face actually, from my perspective, started distorting, and I fell over. I fainted, and
Oh, my goodness.
I don't have a history of fainting. I don't faint. I don't. That's not something I do, but I did. And I fell over onto this chair, kind of off to my right, and I pulled myself up off of this chair, and I stood up, and it felt like the weight of the earth had just lifted from my shoulders. Um, and I just wanted to skip down the hallway. Uh, it was amazing. So I left, and I felt like that for 3 months. So that feeling of release, whatever happened,
Yeah.
whether she opened up my chakras, blew up my chakras, I had, whatever happened, I don't really know. But I had some sort of experience,
Yeah.
energetic experience through her eyes. And it threw me on my ass, almost quite literally. Um, and so through that, my beliefs were challenged, and I went home, started looking through like medical journals and science magazines, and
Hmm.
anything I could to actually make sense of some of the things that I experienced. And strangely enough, I guess not strangely enough, but um, to my surprise at that time, I was finding stuff to support some of the things that I had experienced. And from that point forward, I've just been fascinated by all this, because I realize now that my paradigm has completely shifted and I've realized that we are somehow connected and there's a whole lot of benefit that can occur if you use some of these faculties, if you use some of these tools, that it can really shift people's lives.
Oh yeah.
And it certainly shifted mine. And so yeah, I've just kept on digging and trying to go further and further down that rabbit hole, and it's been an interesting ride. What would you say when someone's looking for a practitioner, when someone's looking for a healer or someone to work with? What should they be looking for? I mean, there's so many different options. I always have challenges with it myself.
Well, one of the advantages, and I would suggest going to events like I have where there's multiple choices, because if you go to just, for the first time, especially if you're not familiar with them, you go to their house, their location, you kind of feel stuck. I have to continue to go with them. It's kind of harder to back away. So if you go to an event where there's plenty of them around, and I get asked all the time whether it's a healer or psychic or whatever, who's the best? And I always say, well, it depends on the person. And I tell them, walk around, and you will be pulled to the right person. And that way, you're not committing yourself to someone and feeling you're stuck. You're walking around, and you will be drawn to the right healer, psychic, whatever you're looking for. And so I think there's an advantage going to that, at least the first time. If you find one there, you can then see them on an individual basis if you want to. But I think that gives you a lot of choices. And I always tell people, the best, let's say psychic, the best psychic in the area that gets wonderful reviews and all that might not be the one for you. I relate to, like, if you have a friend who's married or dating someone, and that person's doing great with them, but you would never ever marry them. You would never ever date them. It's good for them, but not good for you. Psychics and healers and vendors selling all types of stuff. It's the same type thing. That person might be excellent for 90% of people, but not for you. So
I see. So you really need to go with your gut instinct.
Yeah. There'll be a pooling. I've always found and seen it happen over and over. As people walk around, they'll be pulled to somebody, and they might be pulled to a couple. So then you can ask questions and stuff. Again, first time, if you go to an individual, you really don't have. You feel kind of stuck. This way, kind of play the field.
Gotcha. So even stepping in through the doors of these events, the guidance is use your gut instinct. Use your intuition.
Yeah, women's intuition, gut instinct. Myself, I've never been a psychic or so, but in my law enforcement background, I was vice president also to national security companies after I left the Secret Service. And the gut instincts is what they always told me I was pretty good at.
I see.
You have to open yourself up, and maybe I could be a little better at it, but with my background, unfortunately, more control, a little more paranoia, it's hard for me to open myself up a lot. So just enough to know people.
Well, yeah. So tell me about some of your investigative work. You said that people say that you have a good gut instinct. Did you ever work with like missing persons?
Not so much with the Secret Service. No, it's mostly after the fact when I was doing some PI work in the state of Virginia, stuff like that. I mentioned a lot of times talking to many law enforcement guys and that a lot of people don't realize when you see on the news they find this body in the woods or this and that, and you wonder how did they find it here? So psychics involved a lot more than you think. And you could go in front of a judge. It's still today true. That was back in the 70s and 80s. You go in front of the judge, says, I got a tip from the psychic that if we go on this, if you give me a warrant to go on this property, we think we can find something. They laugh you out of there. But
Right.
But if you go the same story, but you say, I got a good anonymous source, it seems pretty legit, you got a better chance than saying the psychic told you. And most psychics don't want that publicity anyway, quite frankly. They just want to help.
That makes sense. Well, hopefully with people being more and more open to um, intuitive individuals or psychic individuals, um, maybe one of these days judges will put a little more weight on a a psychic information versus just an anonymous tip.
Psychic is still better than saying fortune teller.
Well, of course, yes, yeah, that makes sense. I think fortune teller definitely has a stigma to it. So, um, well, very good. Let's see. So, would you say that people in the investigative arena, would you say that a lot of them are intuitive, or intuitives naturally gravitate to that field because they know that they could be of some real service, some real help?
Most won't say that, but I actually have one that is often at one of my events. I actually first met her and her husband while they were private investigators, had their own company, and she discovered that she was pretty good. That was before all the GPS trackers and everything else.
Okay.
And when you're following somebody, it's hard to stay right with them without being noticed. And sometimes you get that they go left or they right. She seemed to know vast majority of the time whether let's go right, and
Hmm.
it kind of clicked to her. Geez, I seem this seems to be. I seem to know more than average on that. So she actually got some additional training because there are people to help you bring this out. And now she's quite good psychic. That's often at one of my events. Not all of them,
Oh, wow.
but
Yeah.
so she has stopped the PI business. Her
Oh, she
husband's
has.
retired,
Okay.
but that's how she
Does
started.
she
That's how
still
I
help
first met her.
to? Does she still help to advise from time to time in that arena?
I believe she does. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because even I mean, it's really pretty interesting to me. Different ways you can kind of connect to the ethers, connect to the collective consciousness. Um, Even muscle testing.
Mm.
Sometimes you can locate stuff just through muscle testing. I had a buddy, I lost my phone a couple months ago, and a buddy of mine was doing some muscle testing, trying to find out where my phone was. And he was like, I'm testing strong on the kitchen.
Ah,
So
was he right?
he was right. Yes, yes, he
Ah,
was.
yeah.
um, but I mean, I know quite a handful of people that have that type of skill, and um, yeah, that's very interesting. I hadn't really thought about missing people. I think that would be a very useful skill to have in those circumstances. The psychic fair. So that's something that you started how long ago?
2017. Doing
And
it ever since.
is that something you had an urge to do for quite some time, that you wanted to bring this awareness to the people?
Yeah. And as I had mentioned previously, a lot of people I knew, acquaintances, friends, were in we're vendors of this metaphysical type world. And I asked, I've always been an organizer. I was the one on the ball field to organize this, organize that. It was just something I do all the time. And I enjoy that. So I said, can I kind of set things up? And it just kind of exploded from some small to getting bigger and bigger. And I like to think, this is a hobby for me. So I'm able to keep the cost. None of my events do you charge to get in. We accept donations, which helps because the price keeps going
Okay.
up for insurance and everything else.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, it's free to get in. And if you check with any of my vendors for the size of the event, if I'm not the lowest cost per table, I'm one of the lowest in the whole area. And the way I can do that, because this is not my main income. This is my hobby, and basically for my love of sharing this information, getting
Right.
it out there, not charging anyone to come in. Someone might be willing to try something, check it out. Keep an open mind.
Well,
So
this is your passion project. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
It's good that
I
you're
feel good
educating
about
people
it.
about this.
I see so many people leave that I've had people leave with tears in their eyes. I'm going, oh my God, what happened? Did someone say bad to them? And I've had them tell me that, let's say 5 years ago, this is true. 5 years ago, the one lady told me her son, she thought committed suicide. That's what the police said and everything else. But the medium that she went to told her the son wants you to know it was an accidental death. It was an overdose, but it was accidental. He didn't want to.
Mm.
And she was even a little leery about that. Did you read a newspaper or something? The medium didn't know who was coming in. It was one of my events. Didn't never met the person before. Nothing. We're talking 5 years ago, and she described the room that the son passed away in.
Oh,
Totally
wow.
convinced her that and she so those were happy tears. So it
Absolutely.
made me a lot happier that they were happy tears.
Yeah. So I've been to two of your events, and the first one I went to, it's just what you said. I was kind of drawn to this one person,
Hmm.
um, kind of back in the corner. She was fantastic. Petra, does that ring
Oh
a
yeah.
bell? Yeah,
Hmm.
she was really outstanding, and she wasn't the most expensive, certainly not the
No.
most flashy. Very quiet, and had an outstanding reading with her, and actually continued and continue to get services from her.
Oh, oh, good.
Yeah,
That's
she's
how a lot of it starts. But again, like you said, wasn't too overpriced or so because they didn't have to make up. There's people charging two, three times for a table what I am. So they're able at my events to give some discounts, some specials. I've had vendors even once in a while when there was really a hard luck case, give it almost free. They didn't have to make up a whole lot. They have broken even very early in the day, so they're freer, they're happier, and it makes them better too. That they're not worried about I'm losing money here today.
well, and I feel like a lot of times people are going to these events to find hope,
Hmm.
and a lot of times, you know, they don't have a whole lot in the way of finances, and so it's really nice when they're able to find a good match where a practitioner is there really to contribute and worried less about the finance. And together hopefully it works out as a win-win. But I know when I had my session with Petra, it was pretty emotional, and um, she was damn good. And so that's why I'm sticking with her. But I also knew a couple other people there at the event as well, and they're all fantastic.
Well, thank you. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
said, there's a whole checklist they have to go through. One of the things is they have to have done other events previously. We don't have any rookies, trial and
gotcha.
error. And that's important, not only organization wise. They might discover they need a helper, or they might discover I got to do something different on my sign up list. But the other thing I've done a lot, and people say, well, why do I have to do other events first? I've had psychics or whatever you call them, healers, any kind of reader or so that have been very good one on one in their own home. But when they're at one of these events where there's all this energy all around them, and sometimes people are interrupting, and some people can be a little rude, that it ruins them. And that they have contacted me back and said, you're right. I wasn't doing a good job because of all that. And so some have never tried that type of thing. Others have honed in at other events to get better at it before they're at mine. So,
Gotcha.
so
Yeah,
some
that
people
makes
say,
sense.
"Well, is that fair?" Not almost everybody else out there will take anybody. So there's no problem getting into events.
I
So,
see.
like I said, unfortunately, I still
Yeah,
turn down more than I accept, but I feel real good about who's there, and anyone who walks in, I feel comfortable that they're going to have hopefully what they want.
absolutely. Well, I certainly have. So that's good. Um, you one thing I didn't know about you when we originally had spoken, and let's see if I can find it in my notes. You were I'm not seeing it, but it's somewhere in here. The co-host of, was it a radio show about?
When I was co-host for 6.5 years with the Mutual UFO Network, Virginia chapter, their monthly meetings. It was a live
Okay,
monthly meeting, and so like I said, I co-hosted that for 6.5 years, sharing information and being there for that. Like I said, that was one of my big interests was UFOs, and
so you would
so
just kind of
there
get
was some.
together and kind of share what the latest and greatest hype is, or what's been seen or not seen, and
Right. MUFON is the largest international private organization collecting UFO data. UAP data now. And so sharing that with everybody, showing a lot of photos and stuff, what's real, what's not, just like anything else. There's a lot of fake, and even now on the internet, it's unbelievable, fake photos and stuff. But so it was that, and it was always for, there's membership, but it was, meetings were always open to the public. We used to have 30, 40 people at a meeting show up.
And so there are a lot of fakes, but there's a lot of stuff that's real. I know that the government has, at least, it's really hard to know exactly what's true and what's not true, but it seems to me the government has been entertaining the idea of revealing the alien life or UFOs, or I forget what you call it these days. But do you have any insights of where the government stands on any revealing of?
Well, there are Congress people and a couple senators and stuff who are pushing it. Others are pushing back. But but now the Air Force, the Navy, they admit that there's stuff in the air that they can't explain. They're not saying they're aliens. We don't know. I've never said for sure they're from other planets. Could be from another dimension. Could be time travels. But even from my teenage years, there was enough legitimate people. I'll go back to my Secret Service days too, meeting people who would tell me, generals and stuff, that there's something out there. They didn't know either, but they knew it wasn't us, and it wasn't the Chinese, and it wasn't the Russians. So what it is, they don't know.
So when a general tells, I guess, their superiors, what exactly is what they're seeing? I mean, why is there a cap put on it? Why is it, the whole concept of it squelched?
Well, for years there was, there's a lot of theories. There's government cover up. There's government, it's always been, the crazy people with their aluminum hats on and stuff like that. There's some people who are very religious, think it's all demons. You can't deal with demons, blah, blah, blah. So you got all types of reasons for pushback. So if I'll do a plug for MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. You can look it up on the internet. A lot of information all the time, that they put out. If you're watching a lot of TV shows, there are more and more MUFON executives and investigators and stuff who are showing up on these different TV shows. That wasn't happening 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, okay. So we're going in the right direction.
Yes. Slow but sure, though.
At least if you believe there's aliens and you believe it should be revealed and you believe people should be more open and there should be more transparency, we're going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Hey, stopped doing my 6.5 years of co-hosting those meetings and stuff because I couldn't do that and still do the metaphysical events, which I really wanted to start doing. And that was all prior to the pandemic. That was involved with a lot of that.
Gotcha.
Still a member, still interested, but I'm not one of the hosts anymore. Not a director or anything.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, you got to make time for your passion project. I'm glad you're doing this.
Yes. I've been enjoying that. I've enjoyed so many of our guests walk away so happy. So, and meeting people like you did, that they might not have met before. So,
right.
And I try to have a variety at all our events. Oh, and I must say, again, one of the things that I get people say, I do Hello Kitty dolls. I make great cups of coffee. Can I sell my coffee there? And they get rejected because at my events, you have to have fitted to the metaphysical theme. Very strict about that. And you don't want to have, you're doing your metaphysical thing and right next to you, someone's selling gutters. I've seen that.
Right. I hear you. Yeah. Are any interesting stories or scenarios coming to mind? You have such a wide range and an interesting background.
Well, I'm a little limited from the Secret Service stuff, even though I've been removed for a long time, and even some law enforcement stuff. When I mentioned about how psychics have helped various law enforcement agencies, they don't like to put that out because they want everyone to think they're very professional, and that might take away some of that professional image.
I get
It's
it.
like, oh, they can't do investigations on their own. They have to rely on psychics and stuff. And I'm not saying that, yeah, it's a high percentage that happens, but it does happen.
So as we begin to start to wrap things up, are there any like summary points or highlights or anything that you really would like to, kind of drive home?
Uh, yeah, I would. One, have people please have an open mind. I always do. I don't. Every vendor that approaches me, I don't think, oh, they're 100% legit. I check them out, but at the same time, I don't push them away. You just keep an open mind. I think that's so important. Number two, and I got my little list too that I keep stuff on that. People need to do a little research. Not there's so much you can look up people on the internet, Facebook, etc. Do a little research. And even research on what you want to ask. So often I have people show up with the psychic or the medium and say, and I don't know what to say, what to ask. Think ahead of time. What you want to ask? What do you want to gain from that experience? So research the vendors, and sometimes, like we were talking about, you'll be pulled to certain ones or so. You might even be pulled or pushed away from reading about them. But the other thing is organizers. We had mentioned earlier that some people have just jumped in for profit. All of a sudden, I saw some that all they did was bingo, 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 bingo. And then all of a sudden, they're having a psychic fair. Well, guess what? They're not vending anyone. They don't know anything about it. They're just trying to make money off that. And I've seen that type of thing over. And so it's real easy to look up the organizers too. Are they involved in the community at all? One way to tell is are they the only thing on Facebook or anything can find is when they're advertising their event. That's it. There's no interplay with anything else. If you go to either one of my two Facebook pages, I have one where it's year round. It talks about at least once a week some metaphysical item that might interest people. And on my other site that just talks about my events, I spotlight different vendors and stuff, and I mention whether they're at one of my events or any other event, that this person's pretty legit, and they don't pay me for that extra advertising or anything. It goes back to what I was saying, to sharing this kind of information, getting it out there. And I like to think someone might say, well, gee, with his background, well, he's not trying to rip me off with these people. So I hope.
I appreciate that you're doing your homework and you're pushing the people that you know or believe to be, um, on the up and up.
Like I said, they represent me too.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You had asked, which happens once in a while. I get someone who wants to do what I'm doing, facilitator, gets to organize some of this stuff. Because as I'm getting older, I won't be doing this forever. So hopefully there are other people who will step in. And I always tell them the same type stuff. Get involved with the local metaphysical community. Go to other events. See what you like at that event, what you don't like at that event. Often there's meetings and things you can go to with different people, learn all about it, and talk to people like me. I'm more than willing to share information. In fact, even regular folks who want to contact me and say, Ed, what should I look for, this and that. Again, sometimes they get confused. I'm not the medium, I'm not the psychic or anything, but I can steer them in the right direction. Not just like we were talking about walking around, be pulled to you. You had mentioned about money also, that just because the person's expensive and someone else is cheaper, it's not you get what you pay for in this business. An example is one is a registered nurse. Her main income is being a registered nurse. She loves sharing this information. She only discovered that she's an empath and seemed to have some kind of skill in an emergency room when over and over she was kind of like telling the doctor, I think this is the problem, or you should check this. And the doctor was, I'm a doctor, I know, but they would be coming back days later. You know what you said, you were right, how'd you know about that? And when that happened over and over, and then she got, again, a little more training, but she doesn't charge half as much as some others, and yet she's very good. She doesn't have to, just like me. I don't have to charge a lot. It's more of a trying to help people, hobby or so. and it's not her main income. So she's charging way less, but she's just as good as someone who's charging twice as much. So you can't go just by that. And sometimes the ones who are charging more, it doesn't mean they're a heck of a lot better. It means they're good, that they have a lot of people want to go see them, and they're limited. How many can you fit in a 7-hour period or so in an event? So they kind of keep raising the price until they get just the right amount of people. And for some of them, that is their main income. So it's useful for them too. So you have to look, is that their main income? Do they have a brick and mortar store that they have to support? And I'm not saying they're bad, they're good too. But the main point I'm trying to make is don't go just by, oh, this person's cheaper, they must not be as good. Can't, that's
sense.
not a solid indicator.
If you were to offer any advice for someone who is looking to take a deeper step into the healing arts as a facilitator.
Well, that's kind of like I was talking about. Don't go from, hey, I'm running bingo events, so I want to do this. Well, maybe you are legit, but it looks like you're just in it for the money. But if you get out for a year or two, even with the metaphysical community, get to know people, get to hang out with the people, go to, just like you have done, go into different events. You kind of see, well, what's good, what's bad, especially if you want to do it yourself. I mean, that's one of the things I did for years. Just go to a lot of the events, and then I got, if I was able to, I'd get the organizer. I could talk to him on the side, and there were some things I discovered that I wasn't too thrilled with, and other things like, oh wow, that's a great idea. Right? Yeah, so you learn from that. So like talk to people like me. So all that type is what I would suggest for anyone. And there's plenty of people, if you want to if you feel like you have some skill, you have some knowledge, and you want to get into that even more, advance it. Just like going to college or so. There's places, there's people who help train you to bring it out even more, and that's useful. And tell you yes and no, don't do this, don't do that. I know one teaches people, once you kind of have this skill, don't abuse it. She gives a story about, if you're in a grocery market and you see someone in a medium type thing, and you feel like, wow, someone's trying to contact you, don't go up to them and all that. If they're interested in that, they will reach out to somebody. Yeah. But they might not want to hear from that person. They might not want, So you have to know, just because you have the skill, how do you use it? And in a way, some people, I told you I do the background checks, and you have to do this and that. I got a whole checklist of things. Some I've had some organizers say, I just have a good gut instinct that they're okay. Well, I kind of feel that too, but I follow it up with a lot more. But the other thing that happens a lot, they'll say, no, we vetted the person because they did a reading for me and the reading was good. That's nice. But just like in anything, you can take a skill and use it for good or use it for bad. I have come across a person who used to be on my approved vendor list that has been removed a long time ago, all of a sudden changed. They were using their skill for more bad than good. They became the money monster, you could say, took over. They start charging people more. Everything was money, money, money. One of the things when I do interviews with people who want to become vendors, and I give some long 15, 20 minutes, we're talking or more, if all they mention is how much money I can make and things things along those lines, never talking about how can I help people, anything like that, they don't get with me. But so you can have the skill, but like any skill, you can use it for good or evil. And so that alone, just because a person is good, you have to look at their history, their reviews, and see what are they using that skill for.
Well, I feel like, based on my personal experience, I feel like most people in this industry are doing it to actually serve. But you get those couple rotten apples that really create an issue for the rest of us.
Well, you're faced with temptation sometimes when you open yourself up to let things in, to help people or so. You're also opening yourself up to maybe some darker influences at times too. And most are able to recognize that, don't want anything to do with it. Most are very spiritual. I wouldn't say too many are involved in organized religions, per se, but they're very spiritual. But some just kind of cave into the dark side once in a while. Small percentage, but they're out there.
Hmm.
So you can't just say, "Oh, look, this person knew this and that." But what do they do then? Well, for $1,000, I can tell you more. Okay.
Right.
So always be
Well,
careful.
well, tell me how people can get in touch with you, find out about your events.
Well, to find out about my events, the best thing to do is go to my one Facebook page, which Event Psychics for You, Event Psychics for You Facebook, and it always has what's coming up, info about my vendors and stuff like that. But contact me via email, which is the same thing. Event Psychics, the number four, the letter U at gmail.com. And I'm pretty good at getting back to people. I've had people say, "Is there anyone in my area you suggest?" Stuff like that, and I'll give them 3, 4 names. In the DMV, my knowledge of people is mostly in the DMV area here. So if you're in Colorado, can't help you.
Ed, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate you having me because I know you're selective, and I feel very honored, sir, that I'm one of the people you have on your podcast.